So in a sense, you were living a dream and you were miserable.
And here I was, 5:30 in the morning, no hair, wearing weird clothes, cleaning the toilet. I'm like, I'm so happy.
Yeah.
I started to make this aspiration to meet Venerable Chodron. Then someone on the retreat was like, hey, my teacher is coming to Singapore next month. And I'm like, who's your teacher? Venerable Thubten Chodron. I'm like, no, you must be joking. I thought they were all perfect. No, we don't fart rainbows, okay? My mother said to me, all actors are prostitutes.
I'm not saying that.
Something to that effect.
Singaporean by birth, Venerable Thubten Damcho met the Dharma at Princeton University. On her return to Singapore, she took refuge at Kong Meng San Pokasi Monastery, where she served as a Sunday school teacher. After meeting Venerable Chodron in Singapore in 2008, Venerable Damcho was further inspired to pursue a monastic life. She visited Sravasti Abbey for 2 weeks in 2010. She was shocked to discover that monastics did not live in blissful retreat but worked extremely hard. So she decided instead to take refuge in her job in the Singapore Civil Service. Offering service as Venerable Chodron's attendant in Indonesia in 2012 was a wake-up call. Not long after, Venerable Damcho moved to the Abbey to train as an anagarika in December 2012. She was ordained in 2013 and then received her full ordination in 2016. Venerable Damcho's monastic life is rich and varied. She serves as assistant to Venerable Thubten Chodron. She teaches meditation, she gives Dharma talks, she translates both Chinese and Tibetan into English, and best of all, she drives a tractor and a snowblower. My friends, please welcome Venerable Thubten Damcho.
Venerable Damcho, thank you so much for being here with us. It's so good to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So, Venerable, you are a very impressive person. I've seen you perform at the Talking Talk event. Your ability to do accents, your ability to be funny. And in addition to that, I mean, you also receive a scholarship to study abroad from the Singapore government, which is a privilege reserved for very small number of people, the elite, the best of our best. And then you did that, you did well in school, you came back, you had a great career, and then you decided to become a nun.
Yay!
So I'm going to ask you to talk about why you did that, your journey, and the way I might phrase the question is, what's a nice girl like you doing in a place like this?
It's because I'm a nice girl. That's why I'm in a place like this.
Please say more.
So, actually, I met the Dharma only at college. I was not born and raised Buddhist. And actually, before I took up a scholarship and all that, my goal in life was to start a theatre company.
Wow.
I was so into the arts. Yeah, that's all I wanted to do with my life. And of course, in high school, this is a typical middle-class Singaporean family. My mother said to me, all actors are prostitutes. You cannot do that with your life.
I'm not saying that.
Something to that effect. Sorry, Mom, if I made a mistake, but that's what I recall. Yeah? So most of my adolescence was me like fighting with her, saying, no, the only reason I go to school is to go to rehearsal. The first job I had out of JC, right, was to go intern with the necessary stage.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was quite serious about this. And then somewhere along the way, when, yes, of course, so she was very upset. And I actually wanted to go study at NUS Theatre Studies. And again, my mother especially was like, over my dead body. Yeah, you're just going to hang out with those theatre people and become gay or something like that. So, it was like, no. Okay, so being very much like I need to do something to make my parents happy and proud of me. So I thought, okay, what's the next best thing? Try and go overseas and get a theatre education somehow.
Right.
And so I guess the kind of middle ground that I found for myself at the time was to take a PSC teaching scholarship, right, which is considered like not the most prestigious of all the PSC scholarships. I remember my parents were like, oh, you have PSC scholarship. But teaching. It's okay, you are still the best among the teaching scholarships.
That's right. But PSC stands for Public Service Commission.
Yes. Yeah. So, and it was my mother's dream for me to become a teacher. She always wanted to become a teacher, but she didn't have the opportunity to do that.
Oh,
of course,
so you work for her.
Right, I'm like living out my parents' dream, right?
Oh, very cool. Okay.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So I took the scholarship, and you sign this 20-page document when you're 18 without much clarity, including things like you cannot get married overseas and all that. Yeah, lots of detail. I was just like, I want to go and study theater. Yeah, so that's why I picked the US, right? Because you could, when you got a liberal arts education, you could major in theater and then, do English literature, but sneak theater in. That was my whole goal. Yeah, get a theater education somehow.
So ostensibly, you're doing English literature.
Yes. Yeah. But I focus on theater, focus on creative writing, and that was really the whole purpose of my life.
Right.
Yeah. Until in the middle of college, I got dumped by the love of my life.
Oh.
Yeah, I had met a filmmaker from Singapore. He's not a filmmaker anymore, but who was also on scholarship. Who I thought, this is it, right? We have exactly the same track. Yeah, you have the same interests. We're going to finish our bonds and we're going to save all this money and start a theatre company together.
And live happily ever after.
Exactly. He didn't think so, right? So somewhere in the middle of this, I get dumped. And I just thought it was the end of the world. I will never be loved anymore. I was so miserable. And then I walked into the school bookshop one day, and I saw
university.
Yeah, in university. And I think it was a break time. A lot of people were gone. So
Which university, by the way?
Princeton University.
Princeton. Oh, I'm so sorry.
I know.
I'm kidding. For those surprise, I'm kidding.
Anyway, that's a whole different story. But anyway, so I saw a book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and it was called The Art of Happiness, I think.
Yes.
So I was just so miserable, and I saw this book, and I thought, okay, I want to read this. So I took this book back. And I read through it, and in it he talks about the Four Truths.
That's right. Yeah.
And I don't know why, it just really struck me. I mean, this seems so basic and simple now, but the dukkha of change.
That's right.
Right? It's like the people you think are permanent and wonderful change.
That's right.
I was like, duh! For the last 2 years, I have been hanging on to this miserable relationship that changed a long time ago.
Right.
And the whole relationship was two of us saying, it will be like it was before. I think it died after 3 months, basically.
Wow.
Then the rest of the year and a half, we're both like, we're going to somehow make it like it was before. It's like, no, it's not going to happen. It's over.
Right.
Yeah, he's changed, I've changed. We've just gone in very different directions, but we still keep hanging on.
Wow.
So that really, really hit me. I'm like, oh, here's something that actually explains why I'm in so much pain. Things changed.
Wow.
Duh.
Fascinating. I mean, fascinating that it's like so obvious for Buddhists, but before you're Buddhist, it's not obvious at all. Right?
No, it just made it so clear. I was like, wow, I have hallucinated this person and fixed this idea. And in reality, they were changing, but I just kept hanging on to this image of what it was like at the very beginning.
Wow.
Yeah, so very misery making. And in the book too, it talked about the method of taking on others' suffering and transforming our own suffering and kind of sending out compassion to others.
Right.
And I just was very curious about that. So I gave it a try, it's because then I was lying in bed crying for about a week, right? Like, I feel so sorry for myself. I'm the only person who's ever had a broken heart.
In the history of the world.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, everybody gets their heart broken.
That's right.
So lying in bed, I started to think about all the other people with broken hearts. And somehow that made me feel like, oh, yeah, I'm not alone.
Wow.
And I had just had the thought, if I can make this suffering something meaningful or fruitful, that might help. And it did.
Okay.
Yeah. So after about a week, I kind of picked myself up, and then I went back to Singapore.
Sorry, how was it meaningful? How did you make it meaningful?
So
you can't do that. Okay.
Yeah, correct. So I did all these visualizations per what the book said, right? Visualize, okay, you take on other suffering, right? It destroys your self-centeredness, you send light out. For the first step, just recognizing I am not alone in having a broken heart, Everybody goes through this at some point.
That's right.
Okay, so there's that. Then I went back to Singapore and I was interning with the Necessary Stage. And they sent me on this project to go and interview different migrant workers to collect their stories.
Wow.
And I happened to work with a group of women who were abused workers.
Wow.
And this is the Humanitarian Organization for Migration Economics, HOME, started by Bridget Liu, which is in it and of itself is its own amazing story.
Wow.
But so I started to go to this shelter and I would interview the women, and then I started running arts workshops with them. And that I felt, I was like, wow, my suffering compared to what they have gone through, paying up all this debt. They get into debt to get a job placement. They don't get paid for months, right? You get abused by your employer. You cannot run away.
Right.
They had just been through so much, and I thought, well, what little broken heart suffering I have is really nothing compared to what they're going through.
Right.
And just focusing on them really helped me to pick myself up.
Wow.
So in that way, right, it was like, oh, what His Holiness described is true.
Right. That's right.
So that opened a small, because before this, I had never ever thought about religion. I was not at all interested. I thought it was like for weak-minded people or whatever, right, who don't think for themselves, go and join groups and sing songs on Sunday, whatever. So I was like, okay, something's different about this. And so there was an opening, and then I went back to college, and of course I was still nursing my broken heart and all that.
That's right.
And I was very stressed out. Yes.
Right.
For everybody who's gone to a school like Princeton, it's pretty miserable. It's very competitive. So I was very, very stressed out, and I thought, I was doing yoga to de-stress, and at the end of yoga class, I would fall asleep during the meditation. It was just 3 minutes. The teacher would be like, okay,
three minutes.
Yeah, say, I don't know what I'm like. No, because you have to remember at a school like I was so wired all the time.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's why when your body has a chance to rest, it really rested.
Yeah, correct. I was always like underslept, right? In too many classes, doing too many activities, trying to overachieve, running around all the time, never looking inward. So suddenly you have to pause for 3 minutes, like, wow, very boring. But I was like, typical type A, you're like, when you can't do something, you're like, how come I can't do it?
That's right. That's right.
I gotta fix it. Yeah? So like, how come I can't meditate?
That's
like,
right.
3 minutes also cannot.
That's right. Meditate harder.
Yeah, correct. I gotta figure out the solution. So I'm like, oh, there's a meditation group on campus. Okay, so let's check it out. So I joined the group, and it was led at the time by someone who was trained by Master Sheng Yan from Dharma Drum.
Yes.
He was a PhD candidate. So he was leading the group, and he had a lot of experience. So he now runs a Dharma center in Florida, Tallahassee Chan Center, Guogu Pusa. Yeah. So back then he was Jimmy and very, very patient, So I would join the group, and I was like, they're so weird. Everybody's wearing monochrome sweatpants. I'm the only person in like my mismatched thrift store, artsy clothing. Okay, but they would chant the Heart Sutra using a fish. I'm like, what is going on? But then they would meditate. And for the first time, I just found myself, feeling much more peaceful. And I tried to do it myself. I couldn't make it past 5 minutes on my own.
How come?
I just, like I said, you're just so used to being stimulated externally. I still remember I would put the timer there, and I try to do it myself. And after 2 minutes, be like, 2 minutes? Oh my God. It's like, okay, try 5 minutes a day.
That's right.
But I found it really helped my interpersonal relationships. Just even sitting 5 minutes a day, I stopped being so reactive.
Right.
And then I was sick for a brief period of time on campus, and I was so worried and all that. And the meditation helped.
How so?
I just sat and I thought, well, I'm going through some tests. I need to get the test results back. Until I get the results back, what's the point of worrying?
That's right. That's
just
true.
calm down.
That's true.
In the meantime, life goes on.
Right.
Just go to class, and then we'll deal with it when the results come back.
I like that. That's real wisdom.
And in the end, it was nothing.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like, they found something different in the regular checkup. They wanted to make sure not a problem at all. But when you're alone overseas, you're like,
That's right.
Can't call my mother, she will freak out. Yeah. So it was not a big deal. So those moments made me see like, oh, it's definitely worth trying to meditate every day. Yeah. So and I think the big turning point was when I graduated. Yeah, so I was with the meditation group for the year, but still living my party college life and all that. And then when I graduated, I won a lot of prizes. My family was there. They were so proud of me.
Yeah, what are some of the prizes?
You want me to list them all?
Just 2 or 3.
Just 2 or 3. No.
like grad student or something like that?
No, I did 2 theses. So to graduate from Princeton, you need to write you need to write at least 1 thesis. And I was not at all into research, so I did 2 creative theses. So I did a creative writing thesis with Joyce Carol Oates as the advisor. She's very, very nice. And then I wrote and directed a play. Yeah, that
nice.
I thought went very well.
Yes.
So I got all the prizes in the English department for these things.
Nice.
I got other, I don't know, like they were like, who's this person from Singapore who keeps getting the prizes? Like, what's going on? Who is she? Yeah. And that entailed money, right?
Yeah.
So those prizes, right? Yeah, and then my parents came, so they got to see me receive prizes, which is what another thing my mother said to me, I don't want to see you go on stage to act. I want to see you go on stage to take prizes. Okay. All right.
Yay.
Yeah, so like, yay. Yeah, relatives came in, you make them proud. And I was just so miserable at graduation.
Miserable.
Yeah,
Even
unbelievably
though
so.
you're taking prizes.
Yeah, I had done all these things that I thought would be fulfilling artistically. I had done my parents proud. I was basically wasted drunk those 2 weeks.
Oh, so
There was definitely a time at the graduation where I couldn't figure, you go and take the prize, I'm like, okay, I need to focus on that spot. If not, I'm going to fall over. I'm so hungover.
So in a sense, you were living a dream, right? Because you're doing all this you wanted to do and getting prizes for them, and you were miserable.
Yeah, and I was very pretty, and I was dating 2 guys at the same time.
Two.
While getting partying all the
Amazing.
time. Wow! What else could you ask for?
3 guys. Okay.
No, too much work. So I was just so miserable. So that really woke me up. I was like, wow, maybe the cause of happiness is not something external.
Right.
And I was like, what could it be?
Right.
And then I was like, okay, I've gone to this meditation class and it seems to say something different.
Right.
And that's when I really started to get curious. And then I came back to Singapore to fulfill my bond.
Right.
And then I just started going to, a friend from the arts got me interested in a class taught at Bright Hill Temple. So same thing, I was like, I'm never going to a temple, it's too weird. And then my friend who used to work in a theatre company was like, hey, I'm not working at temple. I'm like, what? You stopped working for Necessary Stage to work at temple? Okay. So I'm like, okay, I want to see you, so let's hang out. And of course she was like, hey, there's a class for young people. It's very low key, just come. I'm like, okay. So I showed up for the class. It was a really good class. It was taught by a monk who used to work for Microsoft. So he was able to explain things in very clear, kind of logical language. I mean, before this, I always thought monks and nuns only appear when you die, right, at the funeral, and then I don't know what they're doing.
Right.
So here was this person who had a job, spoke clear English, was very logical, and was able to explain the Buddhist teachings. Amazing. Yes. So I was like, oh, okay. So I kept coming back for class. And then the first Vesak day that I spent at the temple, I just had this very strong wish come up. It was, again, Vesak at Bright Hill Temple, as you know, it's like this huge event, right? During the year, 10 people come for class at night. During Vesak, 1,000 Buddhists show up, right? You're like, where are they all from? Like they only show up on Vesak day. And that year, the temple was doing a concert for a change.
Okay.
I don't know if the temple still does this. Yeah, Guangsheng Shifu, he has a music major, right? So that year they decided to like reach out to the youth and they did like a rock concert or something. And they got A Tu, I think, or Lin Junjie, or one of, don't know,
so
or some Chinese star. But the funniest thing was, the celebrity would appear on stage and everyone's like, Guangsheng Shifu. Everybody will scream for Guangsheng Shifu. Yeah. So they were there to see him, and at the end they were all lined up to get his autograph, and nobody cared about the celebrity.
So Lin Zixiang.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. Anyway, so we were there as the volunteers, and they planted us to cheer for Guangsheng Shifu, but that was not necessary. Yeah. So I was at the temple overnight. I was very exhausted, and I was walking around, and suddenly we ran into my teacher at the time, and he said, okay, there was me, my friend, and another young man. And this young man, kind of had long hair. And he was like, yeah, I just broke up with my girlfriend. I think I want to become monk. Yeah. So we were walking around and we met my teacher. And we're like, hey, he wants to become a monk. How do you do that? And my teacher said, today is Vesak. The energy is very good. Go everywhere in the temple and make this aspiration in front of the Buddhas. So in that moment, my heart started beating. I thought, I want to make this aspiration. But of course, it's for the long hair guy who broke up with his girlfriend, right? Like, don't say anything. So I'm like, let's go and do it. Yeah. So I just followed him around. I don't think he actually made the aspiration.
Wow, but you did.
Yeah, I started going to all the Buddhas and started. And the funniest thing is the aspiration that came to mind. This voice in me just said, "Oh, it's too late. It's too late for me to do this. It's just too late. I came too late. May I be able to do this in my next life? May I be able to do this in my next life?" Now, I was 22 years old. Yeah, it's not too late. Yeah. So I don't know why. So this aspiration came again and again, and I went everywhere in the temple to do it. And then at the very end that night too, I was like, it was very crowded. Maybe the Buddha cannot hear me clearly. Must try again myself. Yeah. So I had this very big bag. I was at the main door, and the door was closed. And I just had this feeling of I put my bag down, and I had that feeling of I came too late, the door is closed. And then I made the aspiration. Yeah. But because I stayed behind, I ran into my teacher. And he was like, why did you stay behind? You know, all the youths have left. And I told him about my aspiration.
Wow.
He's like, oh, okay. He said, let's talk about it next time.
Okay.
Yeah. He showed me how to like offer a flower, you know. At the time I would make offerings, like what's that? Yeah, correct. So, you know, so okay, I offer a flower. And then when I left the temple, I cried. I started crying in the taxi, and the taxi driver was like, oh, Bright Hill Temple is very good. You must go back. You know, 光明山很好. I'm like, please, enough. If there are enough messages from the quote universe or whatever, this is like, stop, okay? This is too much. Even the taxi driver is telling me to go to the temple. Yeah, because, you know, I have my whole party arts life, right? This was just such a huge, like, what is going on?
Amazing.
Yeah, so, you know, because of that, I talked to my teacher. And he said, oh, I'm not accepting nuns, I'm a monk. Yeah, and I'm too young to ordain people.
So
you have to
be like a week later or something?
Yeah, about a week later. You know, I went to the class every week with him.
Right.
But he said, oh, there's this nunnery that is associated with, kind of nearby Bright Hill Temple. The nuns there are very well educated. You should check them out. And they're called Baoguang Fo Tang at Shunfu Road. So at the time, you know, there was a group of us who at Vesak, I think all were like, wow, we want to ordain. So we all went to Shunfu Road Temple.
Wow.
And
how many of you? Like 3-ish?
Yeah, about 3 or 4 of us. Yeah, and the head nun kind of talked to us, and then she said, all of you are very young in the Dharma. You should just study more first. Yeah, and she said, here's this website. This is a teacher who publishes a lot of material on ordination. Her name is Venerable Thubten Chodron. Check it out.
That's right.
I was like, oh, interesting. So okay, I had that thought. Okay, I must. And it's true. I looked at Venerable's website, and it has lots of great material.
That's right.
Yeah, but I was quite disappointed, you know, because she wasn't like, you went to Princeton, you want to ordain, come on. Right? She's like, I think you all need to study. You know, it takes a while to get.
That's right. If you're going to Kington, they'll be different. Princeton,
that's true.
Second class.
Yeah, you know, I'm like, did you see my resume? Shouldn't you just open the door now? Hello? Yeah. He's Buddhist, whatever. So, okay, I took my advice and studied. You know, anyway, I had the 6-year bond to fulfill.
It's true.
Yeah, so okay, that was actually very helpful. So I just started going to class. And then that year I went on a short-term novitiate, a novitiate program. And it was done in the Theravada tradition. And again, I just went to have that experience of ordaining short-term.
Oh, so you had to shave your hair and everything.
Yeah, they shaved our hair. And so, and then I went back to work with a shaved head.
Wow.
Yeah.
They asked you, say, Liang ma?
No, it was very funny. I was teaching at the time. My principal was Buddhist, so she was very supportive, and I had a hat. The best part was that the naughty boys were suddenly very nice to me for one day. You know, I remember,
because they thought you went to prison.
No, they thought I had cancer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there were these boys, you know, like they're usually very naughty, and then two of them were like very, very serious. And
so funny.
Then finally they came and like, 老师你 okay ma? Like, teacher, are you okay? I'm like, yes. I'm like, are you sick? I'm like, no, get lost. You know, they were suddenly so polite for the first time in my whole life. And then I had a student break down and cry also who thought I was sick. Yeah, like,
please. Very nice.
Yes. So that lasted one day. Yeah, then they went back to their usual.
You should have milked it more, but that's just me.
Right. Yeah. So it was okay to go back with a shaved head, but it was a very, very good experience. It was my first time wearing robes, right, with a shaved head, and we were at Lumbini, the Buddha's birthplace.
Nice. Yes.
And you know, just to be with so many people doing the short-term ordination, there were 200 something of us. Everyone was wearing robes, you know, and we lined up to walk barefoot to the grounds every day.
Short-term, as in how many days? Like
about 10 days,
10 days,
I think. Yeah. So that made a very strong impression on me, and I felt so happy being there. It was really weird. I was like, I woke up at 5:30 to clean the toilet, and I'm like, I'm so happy.
Right.
And that was a huge shock.
Right.
Again, right? It's like I said, I did all these external things. I was so miserable.
Yeah.
And here I was, 5:30 in the morning, no hair, wearing weird clothes, cleaning the toilet. I'm like, I'm so happy.
Yeah. Amazing.
I'm like, what's going on? I'm out of this world happy. Another nun told me like, just good karma ripening. Don't make too much of it. But just, you know, that internal experience, I was like, okay, I think this is something to continue to explore.
Right.
Yeah. And at the end of that novitiate program, we were at Bodha Stupa, and the teacher in charge was Bante Mahinda from Sri Lanka, and he said, you should always make strong aspirations when you're on retreat or pilgrimage. You know, all these great aspirations are made in the presence of virtuous holy beings. So I started to make this aspiration to meet Venerable Chodron.
Wow.
Yeah, I was at the Buddha stupa and her face just came into my mind because I had been looking at her website and I had thought, she lives in the US. I'm never going to see this person.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh, please, she's a very good teacher. May I be able to meet her? And then make all kinds of other aspirations.
And did she just show up behind you?
Almost, because at the very end of retreat, then someone on the retreat was like, hey, we're a new friend. And she said, hey, my teacher is coming to Singapore next month. And I'm like, who's your teacher? Venerable Thubten Chodron. I'm like, no, you must be joking. And she's like, oh, I volunteer with them every year. Yeah, come for the talks. Like, she comes to Singapore every year. Wow. Yeah, so I started to go for Venerable Chodron's talks.
Wow.
Yeah. And then at some point I wrote an email to her just, about my practice and all that. And she told one of the nuns, track this one down. Apparently that's what the other nuns said. I don't know. Look for her, talk to her, just about my aspiration to ordain. And yeah, so at some point in there, I had leave.
Yeah.
So I took leave and I went to the Abbey for the first time.
Wow. She should have a sign, come for the Dharma talk, stay for the rest of your life.
Not quite. Yeah.
Just kidding.
The nun who I visited with, her name is Venerable Chini. She was very helpful. She said, come when there's nothing happening. She said, come when we're just having our regular life, and there's no program going on. Then you will know what it's like to be a monastic.
That's
yeah?
true. Yeah.
Because, so far I had only been on retreat, So at that time, again, my life turned 180 degrees, right? I stopped drinking. I stopped hanging out with a lot of people. I just volunteered at the temple and worked. And I was like, I want to create the causes to ordain. Yeah, go for Dharma class. Full on.
Awesome.
Yeah, and then go every leave time is like do retreat. Okay, so that kind of went on for about 4 years, and then I was like, okay, we can go to the Abbey. So I went to the Abbey for 2 weeks. The 2 weeks leave, and it was when nothing was going on. And because it's a monastery that's very new, we're still building.
That's right.
It was like every day we were doing such hard work outside. Yeah, we would be working in the forest, right, for fire prevention.
Oh.
And all these nuns were like 60 years old and twice my age. I was like in my late 20s at the time.
Wow.
And I just couldn't keep up with them.
Wow.
Everybody was out working. And I'll never forget the day we worked all afternoon in the forest and it was like, oh, the concrete truck is here. The truck is here with all the pebbles. Let's go and shovel rocks. Because we were building a cabin for teachers, and we had dug like a I don't know how many foot pit, and we we're supposed to fill it with pebbles.
Okay.
I was like, you must be joking.
Like there exists such a thing called contractors.
No, exactly. No, don't have.
Everything is
made by volunteers to make merit. Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, at the time, like, doing dirty outdoor work in the sun for a middle-class Singaporean woman, you did not go to school to do that.
That's right.
Okay? Like, no. I thought I was going to come here and meditate and attain enlightenment tomorrow. So I was very upset.
Oh.
So, I tough it out. Right? Then at the end of the 2 weeks, I remember being on the plane thinking, I don't think this is right.
Oh.
Super U-turn mentally. I'm like, I think after my bond, I'm going to quit my job, move to Indonesia, write a book. Okay. So it was interesting to see, once your mind turns, so many other things happen. So, my mind turned like that. Then I went back and I started working in an office environment. Yeah, I finished teaching, they posted me to office.
I see.
There are all these
You're still unborn at the time.
Yeah, young couples, professionals.
Right.
And that's when I met Buddha Boy, as what Venerable calls your ideal Buddhist partner. Right? Nice Buddhist man, goes for all the group activities. We all date other nice Buddhist couples. We're going to produce Buddhist children, I guess. So that's really what I thought I would do. Because I had thought, okay, it's really too hard at a monastery. They work so hard. What's going on?
So you found Buddha Boy.
Yes, I found Buddha Boy. Okay, and then one day, Venerable Chini at the Abbey writes a letter to me. And there was 1 year too, I think Venerable had said, I'm coming to Singapore. And I did not show up for her talks.
Oh.
And she sent someone to be like, where is this Ruby Pan?
Oh.
And I'm like, busy with work. She's like, what's going on? And then I went back to the US. I went back to Princeton for reunions. And I did not go to the Abbey. And she was like, you need to check up. Yeah, what is your... But she was very, very kind throughout this whole process. Venerable, I remember I met her and she said, okay, how do you feel in a relationship? Is it making you a better person? There's something to just really observe, How do you feel single? How do you feel in a relationship? What's the effect on your mind?
Right.
She really just left it up to me to explore.
What was the effect on your mind?
Right.
Coming to that.
Coming to that. And then she also, when she was like, okay, you chose to go for reunions instead of coming to do your practice.
Right.
Again, what's your motivation? What's going on?
Right,
Yeah, she
right,
never was
right.
like,
Yeah, that's right.
she's like, check up. What
Yes,
choices
right.
are you making and
Yes.
what is the result?
She asks you for motivation. You took out a bottle of spirit and says, for spiritual reasons.
Not even.
No, I won't say that.
Yes.
I think it's for spiritual reason.
right.
Okay. Don't do that. No.
No, I just like ignore, right? I was just in denial at the time. Yeah. So the big turning point was, Venerable Chuni wrote to me and said,
Yes.
hey, Venerable Chodron's going to Indonesia for the first time and she needs an assistant. Would you be interested in helping out? And at the time I thought, I love Indonesia, just as a place. Yeah.
That's like to write a book.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's kind of chill. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, let's go on holiday with the boyfriend first. Yeah, we go surfing, whatever, have fun. I had a friend and who was married to an artist. Yeah. So okay, go have fun in Yogyakarta. Then I will go help Venerable.
Yeah.
So so we have fun, blah blah, and then I go and see Venerable, and just that trip changed my life, because I was kind of up close with her every day, and I just felt, this is someone whose mind is so calm. She had been ordained maybe 30 something years at the time, and I thought she is so stable. None of the bosses I work for had this kind of just very calm. I've seen people cry under pressure and all that. And I thought, just the stress of being a leader. Yeah, and difficult things were happening at the Abbey. She would hear about them. She's like, there's only so much I can do from afar, right? And every day she would be doing her practice, and she was just benefiting whoever was in front of her. And just being near her, watching her like that, made me think like, wow, I think I'm really wasting my time. And of course I could see, as we did a lot of purification practice, especially at a holy site like Borobudur, I could see that, I'm really, really jealous. That was what being in a relationship was making me think. I was very jealous of my ex-boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, who I had never met. It was amazing to see, like, you've never met this person, but you hear about them or whatever.
And you already have Buddha boy.
I don't know, this was Buddha boy's ex-girlfriend.
Oh, but okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Like, she come to Singapore and he'd meet her. Never tell me.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, I don't know her, I have never seen her, and I hate her guts. I thought that something is seriously wrong. This just makes no sense. And I became I just don't like being that kind of person. I was so ugly as when jealousy comes up. I thought, wow, and I had no way to control that.
Wow.
So I thought, wow, is this really helping? Then that's when Venerable's question came up, right? Is this making me a better person? At that time I thought, okay, I have some clarity. This person's Venerable Chodron is living such a meaningful life. I want to stop this relationship. I really need to explore this wish to ordain, right? That had come up long ago, that I had explored for 4 years. And I just need to give it time. Because I was 29 at the time, right? It's like, I might wind up marrying Buddha boy, right? And then there's no turning back from there, right? So I thought, okay, this is it. Yeah, I need to really make time to explore this. Yeah, so I think I bought the air ticket to the Abbey before the end of the trip to Indonesia.
Wow.
Then I went back and I told him, okay, I bought the air ticket. And this is it. He was so upset.
Wow.
I mean, the poor man.
Oh my.
Yeah, he's like, huh? Wait, weren't we just on holiday and you went to this thing and what?
You should die with humor. Knock, knock, who's there? Not me anymore. I'm not kidding.
no, I wish. Yeah.
Don't do that.
No, it was a lot of yeah. But I just thought that, and Venerable Chodron was very helpful to me too. I mean, she's just saying, if you really care about this person, you wouldn't lead them on, right? So you've got to be clear yourself. She wrote me a very beautiful letter that I saved. She said, if you're not clear about your motivation, you need to sit down and, she told me, meditate on the choices that you want to make. And what the outcome will be. So, okay, imagine you marry this person and blah, 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 what's the outcome, right? Imagine you ordain, what's the outcome? Just really take time to sort out what's happening internally. And when that is clear, then you'll know what to do externally.
I see.
And that was huge for me too. Yeah, I don't know, because I'm going to her, I'm like, what should I do? Should I break up with him? Should I stay with him? Should we start a business? And she's like, look, I don't want to hear about the external thing. You sort out what is in your own heart. Start there, then it will be clear. So I took her advice. So I said, okay, I just need some space from the relationship. I need time to sort out what's happening internally. So I went to the Abbey for 3 months. We have a course called Exploring Monastic Life, which is really marvelous. It's 3 weeks every year. So people who are interested in ordaining come together. Venerable teaches just about ordination, what it's like. We have very frank conversations about everything from money to sex to love, right? How are you going to deal with it as an ordained person?
I see. And do you make them like shovel pebbles?
Yes,
Okay.
that is also part of the program. But now you realize it's called making merit,
Okay.
right?
Yes.
You're like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I went for the course, I stayed the 3 months, and I was happy. I mean, this time my expectations were different, right?
That's
I'm like, right, this is what it means to live in a monastery. You live in a community, right? It was just much more down to earth. Yeah. So I think that's the struggle for a lot of people, right? You have like rose tinted glasses, and then you actually move to a monastery and it's like, it's not what I expected. You know, people argue with each other. I thought they were all perfect. No, we don't fart rainbows, okay? As monastics, we're just ordinary people trying our best. Yeah, but you know, you have to have that moment of like, oh, this is what it's like actually. Yeah. So after 3 months, and I got to know the community well, I felt it was a good fit. That's when I requested to return for training. So you train as a lay person for 1 year, and you shave your head, you wear a blue uniform, and you take 8 precepts as a lay person, including celibacy. Yeah. So it's fairly close to the novice ordination. So you live like that for at least a year. And then that really helps people to discern, you know, do I want to do this for life? Yeah. So often at that time, people either decide, okay, this is not it. I want to go back and live a regularly life. So some people do that. Or some people, like myself, decide, oh, I want to ordain here. And so I requested ordination. So it was and I was ordained as a novice and kind of, we call it a training nun, preparing for full ordination. Yeah, so I was ordained for 2 years. As a novice, and then after that you request full ordination. So we received full ordination in Taiwan. So I have been ordained for 11 years.
Wow, very cool. So earlier when you did the mental exercise or what is like, you know, when you go on down this path, did your life meet those expectations?
You know, I didn't really know enough about monastic ordination to that's interesting. I did mainly the visualization of like, what happens if I marry this person.
Oh, but not a monastic thing.
I mean, I did some of that, but I didn't know enough, I think, you know. I just thought, okay, I want to live in a quiet, peaceful environment in line with my values. Yeah.
And
a big negative, the big piece was just seeing that, oh, okay, if I live my whole life trying to please my boyfriend, please my parents, I'm going to be really mad with them at the end of it. As I could see that was a big emotional pattern I had. I mean, as you can tell, right? Like, let me do these things to make you happy and later hate you for making me do it. Even though I was the one who did it.
Yes, you please everybody, you win a Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah. And I couldn't see I was being a people pleaser.
That's right, yes. Recycle the joke.
I know.
I recycle all my jokes.
It's very good. It's sustainable for, I'm not sure what, your sanity? Okay. So, yes. So I realized I'm doing these things thinking it's for the people I love, but actually I actually really resent them. I'm going to be so unhappy and resentful. So that's what made me see like, oh, that's actually going to make me upset with them. I'm going to create a lot of causes for a negative rebirth. Yeah, so that was really a big motivation too. I'm like, I've got to do something in line with what my true values are, what brings meaning to my life, even if none of them can understand it, even if all of them think I'm crazy. I trust the path I'm following.
Awesome. Wow. So Venerable Damcho, are you happy?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I mean, not all the time. I wish I were happy all the time. But you know, I'm a samsaric being with a samsaric mind, so sometimes yes, sometimes no. But I think I'm a lot happier than I would have been if I continued pursuing a career, or even if I started a theatre company, or if I married Buddha boy and produced 2 children. I would not have been a happy person.
Amazing. So you're happy, you're much happier than those scenarios.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Venerable Damcho, to close, do you have any advice for young people?
For young people, you know, I was thinking about that this morning because you put that question specifically. I would say, don't spend your life trying to do what other people want you to do. You know, or don't live your life trying to meet external standards. And I think that's really difficult, especially in a place like Singapore. I don't know if that's still true, right? It's like, I was thinking about the whole school system, like everything is some external standard that is predefined for you. And you are supposed to meet the external standard.
Yes.
And it's like, that just makes 0 sense to me today. As in, we're all different,
Right.
right? We are all on our different trajectories. We all have different motivations, skills, qualities, talents,
Right.
But here's this external standard telling us to judge ourselves against it.
Right.
I had a good friend who said, it's like, here's the wall, and you're supposed to throw yourself against the wall and figure out where you stick.
Right.
Like, that's very painful. It's not a system that says, hey, why don't you learn to evaluate yourself, or why don't you look at your own good qualities and how you can grow, and what are the faults you have and how you need to work with those, right? Instead, here's this whole external structure saying, you did this on this test, so this means this about you. Like, that's a total lie. Do not think you are your grades. Do not think you are your external achievements. You are not worthwhile just because you went to Princeton.
Or Kington.
Yeah, that does not make you a better human being.
That's right.
And if you think so, it's a setup for a lot of misery, right? Because you think you're a better person or whatever because of all these external things that are just going to change and fade away.
That's right.
Yeah, so if somehow there is space to figure out how to work out what is genuinely meaningful in life and to have the courage to pursue it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is one or two things a young person can do to follow that advice?
What I wish I had learned a lot earlier when I was young was just some method of introspection, maybe. Like, not necessarily meditation, but just some making space for myself to look inward and to be okay with that. I don't know, when you're young, it feels like only your friend's opinion matters. Right? Or your parents' opinion is what you must fight against. Like, again, it's so externally focused. I wish I just had made that space to be like, what do I think? Yeah, what makes sense, what doesn't?
Right.
And nobody teaches us to do that.
Right.
I don't know if you know Philip Chia. Do you?
No, I don't know.
No? Okay, I just had this memory this morning, so I'm thinking about him. He started the magazine called Big O. What I remember is that my English literature teacher was his good friend, and she invited him to come speak to us in our very straight-laced, goody-goody top girls school, right?
Wow.
And there's Philip in like his t-shirt and jeans, and he's kind of like sitting in a chair like, why am I even here? I was so shocked by this, because we are the best girls school. You should be so happy that you are here to talk to us. I was like, who is this guy? And the first thing he said to us was, the problem with the education system is that it doesn't teach us to dream.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, this guy knows what he's talking about. I don't know. That just really stuck with me since, when I was a teenager at the time. Like, it's true. There's no space to dream. What does that even mean? Nobody cares about my dreams. All you care about is, am I taking triple science and am I doing well? Like, that's totally not the meaning of my life. So yeah, don't let anybody tell you shouldn't dream. You've got to figure out how to dream and what are the meaningful ones and how to bring them into reality. Yeah.
So a young person, if they can, they should spend time introspecting and dreaming. Right.
Well, not like just dreaming about nonsense, but just get to know yourself, learn to be your own best friend.
So basically, how I can be my best self, or what my best self looks like, and then how I can be that. Right.
Right. What are your own good qualities and where you need to grow? Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
Sorry if I can tell a story.
Sure, please. Of course. For you, always got time.
No, because when I was teaching, I noticed that was a quality that helped the students. I'll always remember there was one year I was teaching Sec 5, where again it feels very high stakes, right? Because you chose not to go to poly or to ITE, but you stayed an extra year.
Correct.
You stay an extra year to do the O-levels, and it's like, wow, you're behind your friends and all that.
Right.
So all of them were, and there's a huge gap between the N-level and the O-level. So these kids are really, pushed for time in that year. And the year started with, I had a student who was very rebellious, but he was, one of these like good-looking, smart-mouthed boys who has a gang around him, so admired by a lot of people. And then in the same class was this very quiet, meek girl. And at the start of the year, he passed and she failed. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, how are we going to help this girl? Yeah. So, okay. And she just kept failing throughout the year. But I noticed every Saturday she would come for remedial class. She was just very persistent in her own quiet way. She had good friends. They would meet together and study. And, she would just keep going. Yeah, very quiet. Seems like unnoticeable, right? Whereas, someone like this boy takes up all the energy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Curse the teacher, tease the teacher, whatever, playful. But somewhere along the way, his girlfriend broke up with him because he slapped her. Yeah, she was dancing with a dance group, and other boys look at her when she dances, so he wanted her to stop, right? So he slapped her, and she was like, and she broke up with him, and then his life just went completely off the rails. You know, he tried to stalk her, whatever, and of course he starts to fail.
Right.
Yeah, he has anger issues. He tries to beat up other people, gets suspended, and you're like, what are you doing? You know, his life is just out of control.
Yeah.
And he was just like, that's all he knew how to do based on his conditioning.
Yeah.
I remember having a conversation with him, and I'm like, you know, what are you doing with your life? And he said to me, do you think I like being who I am? He said, do you think I like it that I come into the classroom and everybody is afraid of me? He said, but I don't know who else to be. You know, I don't know how else to function in the world.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you,
So that's him. Okay, and then in the meantime, we have this girl who's coming, studying, and after half a year, she starts to pass.
Okay.
You know, just based on her own efforts, you know. And she was just so quietly confident in her own good qualities.
Right.
And I remember she would stand up for people who were bullied.
Wow.
She came to talk to me like, oh, so-and-so, you know, they put a pill on his hand, beat him up. And then she started to cry, and then she said, I think they're going to beat me up because I told you. And I said, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
But, you know, she just had these good values and had that kind of quiet confidence. So she started to pass, and then she did very well eventually. And I think achieved, you know, got into the course she wanted to go to, went to university.
Nice.
The last I saw.
Very nice.
Yeah. And then the other boy failed, went back, repeated, you know.
Right.
And eventually was involved in a serious motorcycle accident.
Oh.
Yeah. So all kinds of things didn't go well because of his anger.
Right.
Yeah. And so I think, I don't know, I thought of this story because, that girl just reminds me of someone who had that confidence.
Right.
Yeah, she was so quiet, nondescript, but she knew who she was and what she wanted to work towards.
Right.
Yeah.
So quiet confidence, self-knowledge, and also knowing what's good in you and taking the time to cultivate those qualities. That's what will lead you to a better life.
I think so, and having good values, you know, like she stood up for people who were bullied.
That's true.
Even at her own risk, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I really admired her very much.
Wow. Thank you. I'm sure a lot of people admire you as well. Oh. Thank you very much. My friend, ladies and gentlemen, my friend, our friend, Venerable Damcho. Thank you so much, Venerable Damcho. Venerable, sorry. Okay.
He's so stunned, he can't say my name.
Oh, right.
Perfect.
I like perfect. Perfect is good. Better than alternative.
Who is this guy?
I don't know.